Prologue Go Wayback is a single-player open-world survival roguelike developed by PlayerUnknown Productions, a studio founded by Brandon Green, the guy that created PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, otherwise known as PUBG. Launched in open beta on August 12, 2025 with an early access release planned for later in the year, the game marks a bold departure from Green's multiplayer roots, delivering a solitary, introspective survival experience set in a procedurally generated wilderness. This video dives deep into the game's mechanics, narrative, and development history, explores the studio and Green's journey from PUBG to Prologue, and uncovers obscure mechanics and hidden features in this game that reward players who can think outside the box. Hi everyone, my name is OnePeg. If you end up enjoying the video, please consider subscribing. That would mean the world to me. Also, come and check out a Twitch stream sometime over on my Twitch channel. Thanks. Prologue Go Wayback places players in the role of Lucy, a lone survivor tasked with navigating a 64 square kilometer procedurally generated wilderness to reach a distant weather tower and signal for rescue. Unlike traditional survival games that emphasize combat or crafting, Prologue instead focuses on environmental challenges, realistic navigation, and the gameplay that emerges from within. Each playthrough generates a unique map using advanced machine learning tech, ensuring no two journeys are identical. The game's unforgiving survival mechanics, centered on managing temperature, hunger, and thirst, force players to adapt to dynamic weather systems and treacherous terrain inspired by the Czech Bohemia region. This game is the first chapter of a trilogy, leading to PlayerUnknown Productions' ambitious Project Artemis, a vision for massive multiplayer sandbox worlds. Prologue is a standalone experience, single player. It lays the technical and mechanical groundwork for Green's long-term goal of creating a 3D internet, quote-unquote, where millions of players can craft interconnected experiences. At the heart of Prologue Go Wayback is its procedurally generated 64 square kilometer map, created using the studio's in-house machine learning model, the Melba engine. Trained on open-source landscape data, the engine generates realistic terrains, forests, rivers, cliffs, and mountains, populated with custom assets, trees, and shelters. Each map is unique, ensuring varied playthroughs that challenge players to adapt to new layouts. Survival in Prologue revolves around three core metrics: temperature, hunger, and thirst. Unlike many survival games where dehydration or starvation is the primary threat, Prologue prioritizes temperature regulation. Creative director Scott Davidson explains that you very rarely die of dehydration in survival circumstances. Temperature is usually the metric. Low hunger or thirst reduces your ability to regulate body heat, accelerating hypothermia in harsh conditions. Players must scavenge for food, like canned goods or edible plants, find drinkable, potable water, and maintain warmth through clothing and fire building. At the beginning, you start in this cabin with some post-it notes kind of hinting toward what it is that you're supposed to do. Players start with basic clothing unsuited for the game's dynamic weather, which includes rain, blizzards, and thunderstorms. A thick coat or waterproof gear that are found in shelters can mitigate cold, but wet clothes increase the risk of hypothermia. Shelters like cabins provide temporary warmth, but players have to secure windows or repair structures to prevent drafts and improve the temperature, I suppose. Now, the intention is that you have to forage for edible plants, scavenging canned food, that kind of stuff, and also water sources like rivers are supposed to be boiled or purified to avoid illness. However, it feels as though, at least for this iteration of the playtest, and maybe not for the full early access beta phase of this, right now, the only thing that I've found that really gave you food poisoning was if you ate spoiled food, or if you drank muddy water. The rest of this stuff, if you just went to a creek and drank water straight away, it seemed like that was completely fine. I didn't ever end up with a parasite or some form of food poisoning or anything from just drinking water from a moving water source. The inventory system is most similar to that of a DayZ or a Tarkov, where based on the size of the backpack that you're holding, you have somewhat limited inventory space, with the first bag being just this rudimentary fabric bag that you seem to have crafted yourself by hand. So you have to make choices about what to carry, like food or tools or extra clothing, forcing strategic trade-offs. For example, you could prioritize bringing a compass over food, which could aid in navigation, but could definitely lend to your starving to death. I will say, though, from my standpoint, bring the compass, bring the flashlight, bring the map, no matter what, and I would highly recommend bringing the cook pot that is located inside of the starting hut if you can afford to bring it, but you should definitely prioritize those things because you definitely end up finding huts that don't have a cook pot and you benefit from cooking your food. It generates, for whatever reason, it gives you more calories, which doesn't make sense, but here we are. Insofar as the environment and weather systems, the game's weather system is a core survival factor, not just mere aesthetics. Storms can break trees that block paths, blizzards obscure visibility and increase hypothermia risk. Rain soaks clothes, making fires harder to maintain. The day-night cycle further complicates navigation, with darkness rendering the terrain nearly impenetrable without a torch or a flashlight that you get at the start. However, clear nights allow navigation by starlight, and lightning during storms can briefly illuminate the landscape, just for example. These environmental shifts force players to adapt routes and strategies dynamically. Also, every single playthrough I have made of this game so far, there is a storm that comes through after, 15 minutes or so that literally rips the roofs off of the shelters that you are trying to find. So, yeah, it matters. When you're trying to regulate body temperature and half of the roof is missing from the house, it starts feeling like Black Sheep. You guys remember Black Sheep, right? The old Chris Farley movie? The entire game centralizes around navigation. Prologue eschews minimaps and waypoints, relying on physical tools instead: a map, compass, and, if you're lucky enough to find them, binoculars. Players have to read topographical maps to plot routes, using landmarks like hills or rivers to orient themselves. Environmental clues, such as moss growing on the northern side of trees, aid in navigation for those observant enough to notice. This mechanic rewards real-world orienteering skills and punishes careless exploration, as getting lost in a storm can be fatal. The fire building mechanic, for this game at the very least, is noticeably intricate. Instead of a simple crafting menu, players gather tinder like paper and cardboard, kindling like sticks, and fuel like logs to construct fires. Ignition requires a striker or alternative sources like a cabin's stove if the electricity is active. Fires provide warmth and allow cooking, but wet conditions or poor placement can extinguish them. The system encourages experimentation, as almost any intuitively burnable item like books or even coasters can be used as fuel. Prologue emphasizes what I refer to as emergent gameplay. There's no scripted path or quest markers. Players choose whether to trek through valleys for shelter or climb ridges for a direct path to the weather tower. Decisions like braving a storm or waiting it out shape unique narratives. For instance, you sit to wait out a storm, but you start running out of hydration, you desperately need a drink for fear of you dehydrating and dying, you might have to just brave a storm to hit the river so that you can get water. And the game's roguelike structure means death resets progress, but knowledge gained, like map familiarity, resource locations, that kind of stuff carries over, rewarding persistence and adaptability. Indeed, in subsequent runs, I found they got faster, a lot faster. Now, a second ago, I mentioned that there is the ability outside of using a fire striker to light logs on fire by using the burner on the top of an electric stove to light the log and get the warmth that you need from a fire instead. But there are other out-of-the-box thinking style of mechanics that are included in this game. A lot of them, as a matter of fact, especially when it comes to navigation. Like I mentioned a minute ago that you could use the northern side of a tree, the moss growing on a northern side of a tree. If you were savvy enough, let's say, to notice that provides a natural compass for players that want to forego, let's say, carrying one to save on inventory space. Subtle details like this, inspired by real-world wilderness survival, is easy to overlook, but invaluable to people that are savvy enough. On clear nights, players can use constellations instead to navigate, reducing reliance on tools. This requires memorizing star patterns or using external knowledge, appealing to players with an interest in astronomy. And obviously, during thunderstorms, you could use the lightning flashes to briefly reveal terrain. Quick-thinking players can use these moments to spot landmarks or adjust their route, turning a hazardous situation into an opportunity. If you are running short on kindling, you can burn books, you can burn coasters, or you could even burn extra clothing that you find, rather than trying to scavenge for cardboard or paper. There is even the ability to start fire using sparks coming off of damaged electrical equipment. And a lot of these shelters can also be manipulated in other ways. For instance, chairs in some cases in the shelters can be broken down into firewood. The doors can be disassembled into planks by right-clicking on them with a hammer. You can then use those planks and then nail them in front of windows, etc., in order to be able to create a bit more of an insulated environment so that the fire is more beneficial to you. or you can even pick up and stack furniture against those holes in windows and whatnot to try to insulate against drafting. There are other hidden things, though. Scattered throughout the wilderness are subtle lore hints, such as abandoned notes, little transistor radios playing cryptic electronica, or some environmental storytelling, like broken chairs or dilapidated old cabins that suggest a bit of a struggle. Even the title, Go Wayback, is a reference to utilizing the website The Wayback Machine to look up old lore entries and old Morse code and stuff that was posted to social media by the developers. Now, these elements don't directly impact Lucy's ability to survive, but as just a little bit of an Easter egg, some of the songs, there are electronica songs where you can find cassette tapes and whatnot, and there's a transistor radio where you can change the frequency and find radio stuff playing. The beat to some of those songs matches Lucy's footsteps. Exactly. The tempo is exactly the same, which makes it feel a little bit supernatural. All of this stemming from the creative mind of Brandon Green, otherwise known as Player Unknown. Green is a pivotal figure in modern gaming, credited with popularizing the battle royale genre. Originally a photographer and graphic designer, Green's entry into game development was unconventional. His passion for survival games, sparked by DayZ, an Arma 2 mod that emphasized emergent gameplay and player-driven stories, inspired Green to create DayZ Battle Royale, a mod that introduced the last man standing concept, which he later refined for Arma 3. This caught the attention of South Korean publisher Krafton, leading to the development of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, otherwise known as PUBG, in 2017. PUBG became a global phenomenon, selling millions and inspiring titles like Fortnite and Apex Legends. Its realistic landscapes, scavenging mechanics, and shrinking play area define the battle royale genre. However, Green's vision extended beyond multiplayer shooters. He was drawn to the open-ended survival and emergent storytelling of games like Rust, inspiring him to explore larger, more ambitious worlds. Founding PlayerUnknown Productions in 2019, Green began working with Krafton on a new project, but parted ways in 2021 to found PlayerUnknown Productions in Amsterdam's NDSM neighborhood. The studio, established with a team of 60 engineers and artists, aimed to push the boundaries of interactive entertainment. Green chose Amsterdam for its connectivity via Schiphol Airport and the creative mini Berlin vibe of NDSM, which suited his vision for innovative game design. Initially, the studio struggled with an inexperienced leadership team and an unclear path. Green admitted, quote, "I was a photographer, graphic designer, and then someone gave me a bunch of money and a studio. I had very little experience." A new leadership team, including creative director Scott Davidson, formerly of Rust at Facepunch Studios, was recruited to refine the vision. This led to the development of Prologue Go Wayback and the Melba engine, a scalable technology for generating massive realistic worlds. Prologue is the first step toward Project Artemis, a decade-long plan to create Earth-scale multiplayer sandbox worlds where millions of players can build and share their experiences. The Melba engine, showcased in the free tech demo preface, demonstrates this technology's potential by generating planetary-scale environments. Prologue tests the engine's ability to create smaller 64 square kilometer maps while establishing survival mechanics for future projects. Green envisions Project Artemis as a 3D internet, blending Minecraft's creativity with Rust's emergent gameplay, potentially incorporating blockchain for player-driven economies, though this is not in Prologue. And I hope that when they refer to blockchain, they are talking about security and not tokenizing, because when games like this become tokenized, it suddenly starts to become about the money. The studio has met with some very significant hurdles in developing Prologue. Green's lack of studio leadership experience and an initial team unprepared for the project's ambition delayed progress. The shift to a new leadership team 18 months before the open beta, around 2024, was a turning point, allowing the studio to create a concrete plan. The open beta, launching on August 12, 2025, received mixed feedback so far, with players praising the immersive wilderness and dynamic weather, but criticizing technical instability and occasional procedural generation flaws. Like, on 2 of my last 5 runs, I got stuck inside of rock face geometry that I couldn't get out of, with there being no unstuck feature, and also, you can't climb the fucking cliff in a lot of places. Like, if I was going to come up with a new name for this game and I wanted to name it something else, like, yeah, it's Project Prologue Go Wayback, otherwise known as Fuck This Fucking Cliff, because fuck the cliff. In every playthrough, you have to get up this cliff in order to be able to get to the weather tower. In a lot of cases, there isn't really a spot that's readily available or anywhere nearby, or in some cases at all, to climb the fucking cliff. Now, so far regarding community sentiment, the open beta, announced across several platforms like Steam and the EGS Epic Games Store, generated buzz but divided players. Some lauded the game's atmospheric survival and lack of hand-holding, comparing it to The Long Dark. Others found the world empty or criticized technical issues like crashes and visual glitches. However, I will say, from an ambitious standpoint that is this game and what they are trying to accomplish with something like Project Artemis, when you compare it to things like Earth 2 that exist out there in the internet atmosphere somewhere, this is actually a playable, workable design step where you can actually see and feel what they're trying to make. And even though it is empty and solitary, the ambience is undeniable. The fact that a procedurally generated wilderness gets made in under a minute that is this large, granted there are no animals and there is talk of potentially adding wildlife, but no promises as of yet. The procedurally generated wilderness, dynamic weather, and unforgiving mechanics create a challenging yet rewarding adventure. Obscure features like the moss navigation, unconventional fire fuels, and the hidden lore reward creative players, while the game's open-ended design fosters some unique stories. As the first step towards Project Artemis, Prologue blends cutting-edge technology with Green's passion for emergent gameplay, setting the stage for a revolutionary future in gaming. Despite its technical challenges, its potential to redefine survival games is undeniable. This tech will quite literally change the landscape of gaming in the years to come.